Hi, I'm Paulette Rappa. I am the director of The Way Home here in Sussex County. We've been operational for the last 23 years, working in the sector of reentry, which means that we meet individuals as they are released from prison and we help them to successfully transition into the community. So, my first glimpse of the pandemic, I do remember sitting with my daughter and watching the news and seeing the catastrophic effect it was having on China and then Italy. And I remember her remarking to me saying, Mom, that's coming here. And I wasn't quite sure what that truly meant. And that was beginning of February, mid-February. By the end of February, I felt like I should be doing something. And so I remember purchasing the first round of Lysol and the first wipes and gloves. Not sure what I was going to do with them, but I remember purchasing them and waiting, just waiting. 2 weeks after that is when the call came that this governor was in fact shutting down the state. And even that was a moment where, what does that mean? How does that feel? What happens at that point? A couple days prior to the actual shutdown, I remember saying to my then senior high school student, my son, and encouraging him to bring his books home and start saying goodbye to some of your friends. And he was like, that school's not going to close. And if it is, it's only going to be a week or two. We all thought that too. It's only going to be temporary. Well, it wasn't. And the one thing that wasn't changed or closed was the prison. They were still going to release individuals because they have to. So we as a collective staff and team decided that we were not going to close because those individuals coming out had to come out to somebody to help them. I remember during that time period where I was meeting people under streetlights to give them clothing, reassuring them that yes, this is a blip in American history, but we weren't blitzed because they were going into our supermarkets, they needed food, and looking at shelf after shelf of empty goods and scattered produce and meats that were just thrown all over the place. And if you were in prison for 10 years and you come out and this is what you see of America, you think that something dreadful had just happened to America. And it did, but it was a blip, not necessarily the state of what was happening. And if TP was so desperate, but for all of us who had been out, try finding TP if you've been in prison for 10 years. And I do remember asking volunteers to give me some TP because they couldn't find it, I couldn't find it, and they needed it. And people did. They rose to the occasion and they did give us paper goods and food and toiletries and clothing to help us, to help them. The first real anchor, the first time that I felt like I had a solid game plan, at least a direction to go in, was about a week after the shutdown, in which Dana had organized a meeting for leadership, the EDs, and throughout the state to meet with the Secretary of Labor and the Director of Health and Social Services. And that was the first time that they discreetly said, okay, we're in this shutdown. Here's some things that you could be doing to prepare your staff and or your business. And I remember them even talking about checking your commercial insurance policy, which didn't come into my radar at all because they said that some insurance policies could possibly cover any type of injury from the pandemic. And in fact, ours had that clause in it. It was very rare, and oddly enough, we had one. And I remember the takeaway from that meeting was, wait, somebody else is thinking about us and somebody else is asking the right questions that I didn't even think of. And it was a relief. It was like a lifeboat that was offered because we were just kind of being tossed around, not really understanding what our role was now and how we're going to still provide these services. But Dana was out there trying to steer that ship. And that was a wonderful feeling. And the subsequent meetings that Dana had organized and or relief efforts that they had, monies, funding, grants, opportunities to help rally the nonprofits helped us tremendously because we were just too busy trying to get staff safely in place and the people the participants that we were working with safe, that somebody else had to be thinking for us, and they did. And one of the other real important measures that Dana has provided is that too often people regard nonprofits as just value-oriented, mission-based, and they don't necessarily see the other half or the primary part of a nonprofit, which is we're a small business. We have discrete budgets, we have staff, we have protocols and operations, and most importantly, we provide services to the community that the state or other entities can't provide. But too often, we're not seated at the table when major decisions are being made in terms of policy and in terms of funding. Dana changed that. They said, no, we deserve to be at the table. We are just as valid as any other functioning small business here in this state. And that was a game changer. That was a wake-up call to not just the nonprofits, but also to this state and other stakeholders to say, we contribute to the economy. We employ as many, if not more, employees than any other small businesses as a whole. And we save the state monies because of the services that we do provide. And that was huge. And particularly during the pandemic, that gave us a voice that we didn't necessarily have or had access to. And so Dana has played that role for us so that we have a place to go to and people that we know will advocate for us in those areas, particularly in legislative areas, that hadn't been taking place prior.